Are you what do you call you? Are you the founder or owner of OCKHM, or what do you?
Yeah, so
describe yourself?
I guess one of the co-founders.
Right.
So the way we got into OCKHM was I was a co-founder of WikiHouse Australia,
Okay.
and then so me and my friend who I graduated uni with, Yushan, he's from Malaysia.
Yeah.
He came to me with the WikiHouse idea, and then we found another guy, Rob, who had a CNC machine.
Okay.
And Rob was making sustainable surfboards, and we're like, we want to make sustainable houses.
Yeah.
And
Right.
he's like, I'd like to make sustainable houses, and so we started the company. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
Became co-directors.
Yeah.
But yeah, I recently just bought Rob out, and Yush had a kid back in Malaysia and hasn't been back to Perth for 2 years. So
Okay.
now I am OCKHM.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And the name
Yeah.
OCKHM, I guess, is derived from Occam's razor, which
Yeah.
is paraphrasing massively, but usually when you're trying to find a solution, then it's the most obvious or easiest solution is usually the one to go for.
Yeah.
And how does that relate to your, I guess, design principles and what you're looking to achieve, like the outcomes you're looking to achieve?
Yeah, like, basically that's it. Like the clean, I guess the most simple is the most effective. Yeah, I guess, and it's a sustainability thing as well. Like if you don't need to, but this is, I guess the paradox is that sometimes complexity is required. Nature's not a simple process.
Sure.
So it's you follow, I guess, what seems intuitively right, but ideally you want to use the least amount of material to make it function the way, I guess, you intend it to, I guess, yeah.
Yeah. Well, nature is the most efficient mechanism, that there is, it finds efficiencies, but we seem to be sort of steadfast on this complexity thing as part of an aesthetic, or to try and test ourselves or prove ourselves. Yeah. I should also mention before we go any further, everyone, I have Shaun Banner with me. Shaun and I have known of each other for a few years and wanted to do a podcast for a long time. And today we get to do it. We just been at a presentation that Shaun was actually one of the presenters at talking about biophilic urbanism, which biophilia, it's a bit of a strange name, or biophilic. It's around the understanding of living with nature and within nature, which from a philosophical point of view, we of course are nature, and of it. We, as a wise teacher once told me, we live in the earth, not on the earth. And we need to understand that we're a part of it, and perhaps bring about some of that reconnect, so we can best live in spaces,
immerse ourselves within.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll go back. Sorry, I took on a bit of a tangent there, but like to go back to the efficiencies and finding the nature.
I guess the less is more. I guess like light hand. Like I guess like the teachers. My teachers in architecture, they were guys that, I guess, but again, there's a duality. People that create that contact. So you've got people like Mies van der Rohe, it's all about the detail. God is in the details. And then you've got your Glenn Murcutt's, which are touching the earth lightly. And they're all based in passive and understanding the movement of time. And I guess, again, natural airflow, natural light. But then you've got guys like Morales. He's a Spanish guy, and his stuff was wild, like kind of like roaming kind of elements, different like disjointed kind of parts just spread out over the landscape. Like he was one of my favorites as well. So but I guess like. So I've got a bit of a combination of that, like just, it's being parametric with the way you've got a set of limits that I guess you're always working within in design. Like that's what pushes the design forward, but then it's your intuition which takes it to new spaces or the wider context that you bring in and let I guess move through your working drawings, your ideas, that vision for whatever site you're kind of working on.
Sure.
So yeah, it's never simple. It's not the most simple answer, but I guess the ideal is that you find the right answer, the appropriate answer.
Yeah. For the context of the place and space that you're looking to design and do something with, yeah. What got you interested in this? I mean, you studied architecture. Was it something that you've always been interested in?
Yeah.
This aspect of it?
Again, yeah, I remember, like, early days. I guess it's a lot to do with, like, I always lived in a house. My dad, like, always had a really nice garden, and I grew up outside. Like, I grew up swimming. I grew up going into the bush. I grew up going to my relatives' farms and, like, actually being outside and getting a taste of nature. So when I started drawing buildings, it was just natural to put the garden next to the building, like I'd always known. And then when it came to doing higher density buildings like apartments, I guess, like, intuitively, like, there's a wall there, let's put vines on the wall.
Sure, yeah.
Like, before I was aware that it was an aesthetic, and then I remember my mind being blown in, like, third year, and actually, it would have been the second year of architecture, and seeing this, like, green, active, like walked on roof space. It was a university in Holland, I'm pretty sure, but like, and just to see that become outdoor space, functional outdoor space for what we just said is functionless here. Like, it just keeps the rain out. That was just, and then that kind of inspired, like, where I went from there.
Sure.
And then when I finished, I realized the problem we have in Perth is we're sprawling too far. Like, we're spreading ourselves. After traveling and seeing LA, you're like, you don't want Perth to become LA, and it very easily could be.
Yeah, very easily could happen. Yeah.
And we're not going to go that far. We're not putting big concrete drains to flush out the canning quick and easy. So I think we've got past that. Now it's a repair process. We've got a huge resource of all this remnant bushland. To reconnect that and
sustain what we do have, which I thought was something fantastic about your talk today. It was not so much the glumness of it all and where we're heading environmentally, but, like, look at what we do have and ensure that we keep protecting that, building upon that as well, perhaps even make it better if we can.
That's it. Upgrades.
I mean, that upgrade thing, touching on what you said there, and I think you did have it on one of your slides about the Highline. Is it Highline? Skyline in New York?
Highline, the Highline.
That was something that I studied landscape architecture, began in 2012, but I went to New York in 2011, and I went there. I'd never heard of it before, but a friend I met there said, "I'll go down to the meatpacking district, and there's this old converted train line." And I went there. I walked along there for like half a day, just thinking, "My God, you can actually do this!" Like, someone's taken this. For people who've never heard of the Highline, it's runs its way through an old part of Manhattan that was quite run down throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Formerly sort of a light industrial area, I guess. Which
clubbing district.
Clubbing district, and a few apartments and things in that there, residential, but very sort of dilapidated, or there's a lot of social issues there. And I'm not saying the Highline was the sole reason for the turnaround, but huge catalyst, this redesign and revamping of a old train line into an amazing walkway, really, that's really just aesthetically beautiful.
Elevated parklands.
Elevated parklands,
No, that was a huge one. Again, like I said in the presentation, just I didn't know about it until I was there, and it was just like it made so much sense. And as I guess, like, my interest in planning are there as well through architecture, and just the way, it did. I guess, like, it brought community together, like the community to protect the old rail. They had an identity. They used to rail in all this meat and that history, like, to just junk that and lose that element. Whereas someone just had this bright idea. Like, I took in that presentation. That's what's cool about it. Is like there was a bit of the rail track just left and wasn't landscaped, wasn't touched, and you saw the weeds growing on it.
Right.
You saw the natural wilderness that was already there.
Sure.
So I could imagine people growing up in that district would climb up and walk along through these parklands without them being official parklands.
Yeah, right.
And that's when it was just the peripheral space, and that's what I love doing in Perth. I love finding those spots where you're not meant to be there, but they're there to be, I guess, like, there's no reason to be there other than to experience the natural and...
just to be.
Yeah, that's it. You and nature, and you're in a city, you're surrounded by people, but you find, I guess, yourself there. That's what I can imagine it was, and that they're the people that got together and said, we need to save this. Yeah. So that's, passing that on. Yeah,
definitely. And I guess what they did, they've achieved such amazing outcomes from it, both environmentally and socially as well, and I mean also financially and all those sort of things.
That's it, and that's the one that sells.
It is, isn't it? Isn't that unfortunate though? Like, in a way, I mean, I guess you just have to play the game. That's what it is. But we have to, like, whenever we feel like we want to preserve something, or something natural, whether it's trees or parkland areas, rivers, etc., we need to associate it with a financial outcome for it to actually be passed. And it's a little bit unfortunate we have to do that, but I guess that's the reality we find ourselves in.
Yeah, that's what makes us awake versus dreaming, I guess. Like that you got to watch that number roll in your account. But and like, I guess I'm an idealist. I've worked for, I guess, like, I've been lucky enough to work with an architect who, while I was working with him, sort of like started his flagship and development. And so now he's pretty much a full-time developer, having been an architect, but still with that architect's mind. And his project was the first in Perth to, like, really sell and market using sustainability and green systems integrated into his building.
Interesting. Where is this?
So this is on the edge of the freeway in Mount Street.
Oh, okay. The one that anyone living in Perth, I'm sure you know of it. You've driven past it with a massive green wall. The circle windows. Something that you worked on.
So, like, I originally was talking to a graffiti artist to do a big mural. Right. But that particular artist was a bit flaky. Okay. And my boss is like, go with the AstroTurf. And I was like, But it actually worked out because he was insistent on having ivy. I wanted to put the hardened Bergier in there, and it would have done well as well with some, like, steel grading. Sure. But he's like, no, the ivy. I trust the ivy. That'll last forever.
It is a hardy plant.
It is a hardy plant. But, like, it's a noxious weed if it gets in, and like, it can get through the cracks and start causing a bit of structural damage. Sure. But the AstroTurf actually prevents the ivy from rooting on. Right, okay. So it's like, so the ivy is growing long and dangling, but it's not actually able to get those feet attached to it. Right. So it's kind of worked out well in that regard.
Interesting. So, not like you'd see in a typical brick wall or concrete wall where it just latches itself and really gets ingrained into it. It has a different form to it because it can't root itself. That's interesting.
It is interesting. But so that was the start. And still done a bit more work with him, a few other developments, and again, it's always that, like, since I also went back to uni after finishing my architecture degree, because I did my thesis in how to prevent sprawl, based in sustainability and building open and elevated, I guess, architecture, went back and did a bit of teaching at uni, and then got this guest lecture from Peter Newman, and basically everything Peter Newman said was what I'd learnt in doing my final thesis project for architecture. And I'm like, I got to study under this guy. I got to answer these questions I have. And going back to study that Curtin University of Sustainability Policy. So it was a master's degree in climate. Masters in Sustainability and Climate Policy was the name of the course. And so, yeah, that's what, I guess, sparked my understanding and interest in policy. And that's why, I guess, we're doing this Biophilic Cities Perth thing, is to, like, create, I guess, a discussion and then push that discussion on to those who can actually write it into paper and, I guess, say we need to have these things because they make sense.
Yeah, for sure, definitely, well, on that Biophilic Cities Perth, can you touch on and I guess elaborate on what that is and what you're looking to achieve as a organisation / group?
A friend I met through CUSP was Yana Sutherland, and she went through and actually did a PhD in biophilic design. So we both, I guess, like found that to be our favourite subject in that CUSP course. And she went and became the doctor, the doctor of biophilic design, while I went back to, I guess, the architecture world and I guess got my skills up in design and then started my own company and trying to, I guess, resolve the issue of losing our backyards through flat pack houses. And then, she said she, in doing her PhD, met a whole bunch of people in the biophilic design networks, biophilic cities networks internationally. And it was her connections with them where she came up with the idea to start, I guess, a chapter or a group here to network with those guys. And as soon as she came up with it, she called me and said, would you be interested, I guess, in being on the steering committee for this group? And I'm just like, hell yes, like, you know it, that's what we're here for. So, and that's how it came about. And now it is, we're here today and talking about it and just saying there's a solution here. There is.
Yeah, and it's the solution is sort of very much against the propagated alternative. Like the first slide that you showed in your presentation was the classic sort of Blade Runner sort of stereotype of a city where it's for any Star Wars nerds like me out there, I should say, like Coruscant or something, where it's just like this massive city and full of electronics and concrete and steel. But really, that's one thing that's been sort of perpetuated through film and
there's the elements of it in Tokyo. Like you go to Tokyo and you see elements of it, but in Tokyo, every like within any radius, you'll be able to find an immaculate garden, nature space. Yeah. The Shinto religion in Japan is nature-based. Right. So, like, it's something...
Taoism, it's all based on nature. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so it's like, it's interesting. Like, they, again, as a culture, they have such a great respect for nature. Whereas, I guess, the English, I guess, that's where our culture came from, in Australia at the moment. They, I guess, were more, I don't know, it was like they kind of dwindled their forests down over years. And that was probably, I don't know, Roman, like it was just a power thing. Whereas the people prior to the Romans, like they were nature-based.
More that pagan aspect of it.
The indigenous people here, like were definitely in contact with it in a harsh climate and sustaining such a large, I guess, civilization here.
Definitely.
And that's what's cool about the moment as well, is like with reconciliation, like I guess like where the younger people are actually learning back from the indigenous people, like we're aware that there's 6 seasons here in Perth, it's not 4 seasons.
Exactly,
like climate, where I guess, and being part of that country, I guess, we come from this land. If you've lived here for more than 7 years, you are of this land.
Sure.
Literally. Like that's. Yeah. We. So I guess it's like. Yeah.
So it's a change in the culture, like changing the way we view the environment and us as part of nature in our culture. And I studied anthropology as well as landscape architecture, and one of the major things we spoke around anthropology was our role in nature and the environment as well, and how
custodianship.
Yeah, custodianship, as opposed to what you were speaking to what you were discussing there about our European background and heritage, which it also has a religious, and that's also the same with the Japanese as well, but it also has a religious influence. Well, we come very much from a story of that the earth is here for our bidding, that the earth was placed here for us to do what we want with, not to be custodians of it, and to either turn it beautiful or to mine it and extract the hell out of it. And that's something that's been prevalent in Australia ever since it was founded by Europeans. But like you said too, I feel like we're starting to really see some changes around that, where we're actually starting to question the culture. We're like, oh, hang on, is this really what we should be doing? Like,
is that what makes us happy?
Is this what makes us happy? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, that's the number one question, isn't it? Is our happiness over our financial well-being?
Yeah. Finances are good, but they're not good if you're not happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, it keeps a lot of people chasing their tails.
It does, yeah. But it's interesting that you have your employer, I should say, getting into developing, from an architect background, because I know especially in Western Australia and certainly most parts of Australia, most developers are just business people, or it's been in their family for generations, and their understanding of design, aesthetic nature just isn't there. It's not even really a consideration except for what's opposed on by planning commission, etc.
Let's do the numbers.
Yeah, and so
get it built for the cheap.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you feel we can better, turn that story around, like help create a new culture around
that's
living in with nature and as that as aesthetic?
I guess, well, you build, again, like it was in the presentation, Nigel, he started it saying because his yard was nicely landscaped and had that feeling to it, like you walk in there and you feel that peaceful state because you're in contact with nature. He sold it for more money. I think
more than it was worth.
More than it was
$80,000 more than it was worth.
And I think that's a consciousnness that developers will start to understand. There's been a big fad in, like, I guess, green installations and green walls and like these I guess kind of design features, which are biophilic design, but like they got really popular very quickly, and I don't see them going away now that we understand how they work. It was I guess, and that's what, especially for inner city density, like there was no option for that before. It was just dry, it was concrete. We didn't have the right, I guess, reticulation systems to keep that stuff living. Now we do.
Or storing of rainwater, for example, is all about, okay, how can we shift this water as quickly away as possible?
Get it into the ocean. Whereas, like...
with all the petrochemicals that go with it.
So I think, like if you can create that feel, then you'll sell your blocks or your apartments for more money. And that's a luxury. It's a luxury end thing. So like only the luxurious apartments are getting these really well designed kind of garden spaces. And again, like I guess that's something I always knew. Like if you want to get the masses to like something, then you got to sell it to, I guess, you got to make it a luxury item initially, and then find out a way to get it to everyone. Yeah,
for sure.
So
trickle it down, which can be a tough thing to do, but eventually in the long term is always going to be an option. I guess it's and policy shift, top down approach, man. Like speaking to those who make the decisions and just prevent the subdivisions they're doing on Elcomos right now. For sure.
It's not a livable place.
No,
you're close to the ocean, but
we're effectively, in lots of the outskirts of Perth, we're effectively building ghettos. Which they may not present that way at the moment, but if you look into it enough, they do. But I think it's going to be definitely apparent in 20, 30 years' time.
Once the developers pull out, like sell their last block in Allenbrook, that will fall very quickly. It looks presentable at the moment because the developers are paying to do all the
maintenance
on the basically the verges and that type of thing. Like, large populace of low income earners living on a 2-lane highway with no major transport.
Yeah.
That is a hairy situation. And the problem is they're the guys buying there because the house and land packages come the cheapest out there.
Yeah.
The government really should be aware of what's coming, and they're not yet.
Yeah. Well, I guess a lot of governments, and the issue around that is that their focus is on the 3-year term or whatever it may be. They don't want to look at the long-term objectives because it doesn't matter to them. I mean, what matters to them is staying in power, and if that means placating, developers and all that, then they'll probably do that. Or placating low-income earners for what their needs are.
It's such a simple solution that I noticed a while back. To do, I guess, land development, there's a huge amount of subsidies given for all your infrastructure, your water, your electricity, your gas. Huge subsidies paid to these land developers, whereas urban developers, infill developers, multi-res developers don't get any subsidies.
Oh, right. Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Like, so there's this huge amount of government money going to pushing this stuff, which they could just say, no, we're not going to do these subsidies anymore. Sure. And very quickly, you'd see those land developers start doing infill.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and doing it well as well. Because they'd have to find efficiencies there.
Exactly.
That just reminded me of something from your thesis that I read. What was it called again? The vertical city one? Yeah,
the open and elevated. It was called Nowhere to Go But Up. How can we attain sustainability through open and elevated living? Yeah.
It was a great portfolio that I managed to get off Shaun very thankfully. He emailed it to me, and one of the interesting points that I've always thought about was, I remember you had a provision in there that developers weren't to make any money.
So how's that going to work?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you. I've always been thinking about that. Yeah, perhaps. I mean,
but the interesting thing, while I was prepping for this talk today, I was looking up a few precedents I knew from Melbourne called the Commons, and it's a very similar system, like to what I was imagining. Like there still are profits, but it's the people living in the apartments. They're the ones putting the money up.
Right. Okay.
So they're the investors. You're not working for the Chinese dude looking for a 10% return. You're working for the people.
Or the bikie gang, or
or wherever you're getting your cash from. Yeah. But you're doing it for the people who are investing their future into these apartments.
Yeah, which is a brilliant way to do it.
Yeah. So there's 2, I guess, apartments set as a precedent over there, and I think they're doing one in Freo.
Okay.
Now, these Melbourne guys, they're called Breathe Architecture.
All right.
So that's a solution I see, and what I see is that exact thing, rather than just putting it next to train lines. Is Perth has the opportunity to put it next to a waterway and a train line.
Sure. Yeah.
And revegetate that waterway, and that's why people move to this place, is to have that contact with
definitely
one of the most biodiverse systems in the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that often gets forget about with Perth. We talk about the ills of the place, but we are, like you said in your presentation, a top 10 biodiverse city in the world. It's incredible what we have here in the southwest of Australia, and it's our obligation and responsibility to preserve that, really, and do as much as we can to do that.
And you only notice it when you travel a lot.
Yeah, I know, right?
You come back and you're like, this place is crazy.
I know, right? Yeah, that's the thing, that's one of the issues that's faced Perth, I guess, for a long time, as we were so isolated. We're the most isolated capital city in the world, and has for a long time been very hard for people to travel and get outside of ourselves and Perth. But when you do go away,
our era though,
it's changing.
Tourism was a mass market thing.
Yeah.
So now anyone our age, by the time they're 19, they've gone on their first overseas holiday.
Yeah.
So they've seen how it is elsewhere. Whereas 20 years ago, that was very different, I imagine.
Definitely. And internet as well, I think. So,
true. You
to
see
show different
directly, and the projects, the precedents for how things can be done.
Definitely, how the technology has facilitated our creativity and our ability to build.
Information sharing.
For sure.
I remember when Zeitgeist came out for the first time, you know, like the internet. It's funny, like when I first saw those type of, I guess, like mind-opening movies, that was through me going back to uni. No, I was going to be doing tutoring, actually. This is before I started teaching at uni. I was just going to be doing high school tutoring. And I went to a lecture while I was learning, I guess, the course to do this high school tutoring. This dude who was also doing that said, go check out this lecture. And it was by this guy, this is while, so early uni when I was doing this. And it was this dude, Scottish guy, who was from an eco village called Findhorn, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
And he was doing a presentation at... I
think it's pronounced Findhorn or something like that. Something
sort
weird.
of like this, Scottish kibbutz thing. But, so he was doing a lecture at Murdoch, a guest lecture.
Okay.
So I went to this lecture at Murdoch, and I recently, like when I was 19, I had a bit of an awakening experience and realised, like, oh wait, we're one. I've been kidding myself. What am I fighting? But the way his ontology, for me as a rebellious 19-year-old saying like everything's fucked, and then hearing this guy like really with such a similar view in his like 50s and 60s, presenting to all these lecturers at Murdoch, and then these lecturers like posing questions to him and being confused and lost, and I'm like, I know exactly what this guy's talking about. And then I told my friend about this lecture, and the power went out that afternoon after I told my friend. I didn't have anything to do, there was no internet, so I for the first time I did a bit of yoga. Saw a book on the shelf, it was a yoga book, I looked in it, and what I was doing naturally was in the book. I'm like, that's pretty cool. And then I went and had a bath, and then the power came back on, and the first thing that popped up was my friend saying, check out this link. And he checked out the website of this lecturer, the Scottish guy, and it was a link to Zeitgeist. And I remember just sitting there after in a very relaxed state and just seeing like those cool trippy visuals and just like this very logical presentation on that first movie, and just like I guess posing that like I guess maybe what we're told isn't always the actual kind of way things happen, I guess, like things it's a lot more at play in the way the world moves and shifts.
A lot more going on. That doco was a major catalyst for me as well. Beginning of 2011 I watched that. I think the number 2 had just come out, and then I think I might have watched number 2 first, and then I went back to watch number 1. I can't remember. Either way, the third one was a bit but
got Jacques Fresco out.
So
let's do it today.
Exactly. That whole Venus project idea was pretty interesting in number 2, but certainly number 1 was like, it was just such an eye opener that you're right. I had the same thing, and my friends who we watched it together were like, all these things that were on the back of our mind about, hang on, something, that Morpheus thing, you've known all your life, something's not quite right. And we've all, and I was like, what was I? It must have been like 30 or 31 or something when I watched it. I was like, fuck, all these things that have been at the back of my mind, I've been thinking about something, like, this has just been like, sort of, you're right, in such a fantastic way, it's been spoke about, like, this is actually the elements that are at play in this world, sort of creating the reality for us, both in religion, finance,
the operating system, the world, like I guess.
The overall operating system that we live amongst. That perhaps we aren't as free as what we think we are.
So it was cool to have break some boundaries at that point in time for me. Really opened myself up to. The possibility of like, I guess, getting back to seeking your own authentic truth, I guess.
Sure, yeah. bringing it back within rather than trying to find validation without. I think that might have been a theme that is good with what you guys are doing as well with Biophilic Perth, is that, you know, it's not just about like saying this is what that organisation needs to do or this group of people, but really starting within, like understanding we're not going to be able to create the sort of vision we want to see for a city and its inclusion of nature if we don't do that within ourselves. The Jordan Peterson idea of cleaning our own bedroom before we try and...
I don't know Jordan Peterson.
Oh man, I've just gotten you down a rabbit hole. Check out Jordan Peterson when you get home.
Cool.
He became infamous about a year and a half ago. He's a professor in Ontario somewhere for some legislation that I think it was the university and also the state government was trying to pass in regards to gender pronouns, and so it brought up this whole war of the socially progressive left and the fundamentals right, and like in the
I think I might have seen that on South Park.
Possibly. I'm sure they've touched on it.
Pretty PC principle.
And he sort of came at it from like where are we at, like looking back at like what Marxism and fascism and all those doctrines have done to what they have actually done to society over time.
Right on. Like reassessing.
Like actually, hang on, is this the right thing to do? And also, political correctness. But he's also, the main crux of his message is really about self-empowerment and our connection with who we are, and therefore, the nature around us. He's a really interesting guy, very articulate in his words, very intelligent. There's a couple of amazing Joe Rogan podcasts with him too, if anyone would like to check it out. Understanding that, we need to really start within and develop, if you're right, if I was the same too, I was very lucky. I grew up on a quarter-acre block, and we had a big backyard, and we could play football and cricket, and we had garden beds everywhere, and my front yard was just one big wilderness sort of forest, and it was fantastic. But not everyone gets that experience. Especially now, where there is a lower density of trees and vegetation in our suburban areas, especially. But it doesn't mean we can't find it; it's still there. I'll go into another further tangent and to touch a bit on what perhaps you were. My first psychedelic experience was with psilocybin mushrooms down there in Balingup, and I was in the forest, and my whole understanding.
I still need to do that, man.
It's something that, I think it's a birthright for everyone, as Terence McKenna would say. But it flipped a switch inside my head around what my connection to nature is, and that and something again, Terence McKenna, as he says, once you've done a plant-based psychedelic, the last thing you want to do is chop out a tree. And that's that fundamental connection to nature that is missing in our society.
Like we secrete the DMT when we dream. So. It's that yes, the psychedelic experience, and I had some DMT just prior to doing my thesis, and then I went and sat a 10-day silent retreat, and the culmination of going to that place for those moments, very temporal, but then to sit and just be with myself for 10 days in silence, and to be around nature, that this Vipassana out in Brookton, and it's just the most amazing landscape, this rockery looking down the valley into a creek running past. There was this old tree when they built the property. It was dead. They're like, should we bulldoze it? They're like, no, just leave it there. And after they'd been running, I guess, the meditation, the tree bloomed back to life. And then I went a second time, and now there's a forest around the trees. They replanted around it.
Cool.
And it's having that, and then doing my thesis, that final thesis. Without all of those experiences, I guess, leading up to it, I don't think I would have discovered, so I wouldn't have learnt so much out of it. It was, I was looking at a tree and just seeing the cloud with a trunk at the bottom.
Sure.
Because that we got taught, kids, the trees are just a trunk and a cloud.
It's unimportant. It's just there.
It wasn't until I looked at it properly, and I'm like, saw the fractal nature.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, and that's another good one is the fractals, man. That got
definitely.
into my thesis as well.
Did it? Okay, yeah, nice.
Mandelbrot set and just how infinite within, infinite without.
For sure, yeah. I mean, look at all of our, when we watch a movie these days, all our CGI, the amazing graphics that we see in regards to nature and the environment is all based on like fractal algorithms. They just place fractals upon fractals, and that's just a mirror of that's the way nature is, and that's what we are, like you said, within and without it as well, eternally.
That's why it's one of the main biophilic design components as well.
Right.
So fractal patterning. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, if never heard of fractal patterning, check out, just type in fractal into Google Images, and some pretty amazing images come up with that. Nice, Shaun. I think that's we had a good delve into it there. I think certainly the reconnection of ourselves as individuals to nature, is a big one of all this, and whether it's going down to the beach and getting some negative ions,
just
or
breathing it in,
or just sitting under a tree, going out for a trek. I think we've been a long time, and probably for good reason, we've been there. We sort of feared nature for good reason, when we're getting attacked by lions and tigers.
I think
and
it's
stuff
time
like that.
to put that fear for nature aside.
We've moved past that. We've
and that's cool. That's a golden era switch happening.
Definitely,
you don't have to worry about your the environment attacking you anymore.
Exactly. Not like our poor ancestors for thousands of years. We've got this place where we've been able to build these quite amazing cities. Well, I don't know if amazing is the word, but we've built these cities that keep us safe. They're impressive.
They're a good beta test, anyway.
Yeah, they are for sure. But there's definitely, like you said, I think there's been a switch now, and it's now our opportunity to this canvas that we've been given to actually paint something quite exquisite on there.
Yeah, and I guess I did a lecture at Curtin just recently about, technology and technology of fabrication. And I ended the lecture basically understanding that as technology develops, it tends towards biology, which will lead me perfect into the next lecture, which was biophilic urbanism and integrated greenery. But we are biological, and so what we eventually invent will be it is all biological. It's just the problem is we haven't figured out how to contain the elements that kill life effectively, and that's what we're working on at the moment, collectively. Optimism. It's happening. It's happening.
I think I agree. We're heading in a good direction. It just takes more of a discourse, more of these conversations, and grassroots level. Someone said in there, might have been you again, also it was one of the other presenters, but think global, act local.
Think global, act local.
Which is really just decentralized. Always trouble pronouncing this. Decentralism, is that the word? Decentralized thinking. So they're just bringing you back into the pockets of your community, etc.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you, Shaun. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today. I'm glad we got to do this after I think I wanted to do a podcast with Shaun even before I started doing podcasts 5 years ago. So today's the day. I'm very glad. How can people find out about you and your stuff with OCKHM and
so check us out on OCKHM, OCKHM. We didn't need the A, it wasn't necessary. So OCKHM.com.au. And we've just started a new one called at http://biophilic.solutions, and that's all. That's something new that's happening.
Yep, nice one. So check it out, everyone. Have a look at some of the amazing work that's going on and the future of where we are headed. There's no alternative, as the way I see it. We are reintegrating back with nature and the environment, and we need it because we just do, because we are nature. There's no other thing to say about it. So thanks very much again, Shaun. Really been a pleasure, and hopefully you can do this again another time.
Yeah.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone. Nice one. Thank you, Shaun. Really appreciate it, man.
Good, man.
Yeah,
All
that was
good.
really good. Oh, man, I could have kept...